Thank you for taking your time to watch this video. Um, my name is Joe Legault. I'm the coordinator of English and Language Arts for Roanoke County Schools, and the purpose of this video is to walk you through our comprehensive literacy plan. Not to read the whole thing, but just to explain how to use the manual as an instructional tool for you and your students. So I'm going to begin by explaining, just let's start with the cover. Um, it's a comprehensive literacy plan. It is inclusive of all of our schools. We are extending our literacy plan to sixth grade this year. And then the following year will include seventh and eighth, and then on to high school the year after that. Another thing I'd like to point out about the literacy plan is that the manual itself is for 2015-16. So we will continually look at the literacy plan. In the introduction, I mentioned that it's a living, breathing document. It's something that we're going to look at the things that went well, amplify those, and change the things that need to be changed. So every year you will receive a new one with the updates and the enhancements. And also, just as a side note there, that really it's just all about the children. We've got the picture of the students on the front, and that's to kind of center us around what it is that we really do. Okay, turning the page to the next page, you have our table of contents. I'd like to point out that the table of contents, there is full pagination for every section of the literacy plan, including the samples that we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, here in the introduction, this is where we kind of give our rationale, how we started, how far we've come with it. I'm not going to read this to you. I'd ask that you'd please take your time to read it at some point to kind of understand. But our literacy committee began in 2008. Our first plan was fully implemented by 2010, and this plan extends that, amplifies the things that went well, and modified and changed the things that we, upon reflection, have decided that we needed to change. One thing I really want to point out here is in this paragraph right here, the first sentence, it says that it's important that the pace of the implementation and change does not exceed our capacity to follow the plan well. In other words, we really want to make sure that we build capacity, we give the teachers the professional development they need, and we provide the resources necessary so that we can implement this plan well. Folks are on a continuum. Some folks are doing all of these components already and have been for some time, and some folks are brand new to a grade level, brand new to us, or brand new to teaching, and so they're not going to be able to take this and implement it 100% right away. So just keep that in mind, that as long as we're moving in the direction of implementation, that's the main goal, not to have it all ready to go next week, so to speak. Okay, moving on from there. The next thing you're going to find is a clarification of terms. Now, this clarification of terms, it started as a glossary, but glossaries are typically in the back. So we moved it up to the front because we realized that we really need to speak the same language about things. If, for instance, in my face-to-face presentations of this, I've joked and asked the teachers to raise their hands, how many folks have F and P'd a child, and everybody raises their hand, of course, and then I tell them, well, F and P is not a verb. You don't actually do that to somebody. F and P are two wonderful women who have come up with a great system to benchmark and screen for a reading level, primarily based on fluency. And so we've, defined these things. And it's in alphabetical order. But in education, we like to have our acronyms. We like to have our initials and things like that. And we also tend to take proprietary things and turn them into the name for something, kind of like we do in general with Kleenex substituting for tissues. Kleenex is a brand of tissues, but it's proprietary. And so if we say words their way or word study and we use them synonymously. Well, it's not exactly right, because word study is a process and words their way is some proprietary way to do that process. So we just wanted to clarify things and make sure that we had plenty of information here for you. So there's a couple of notes of that. Okay, moving on to the next. These are our major components. We have comprehension, vocabulary, and writing. And of course, we know that those are the components of literacy, but we wrote this out to give our definition and our rationale for what we're talking about when we say these terms and how they plug into our literacy plan. So take your time to look at those and read through those at some point. The next page is titled The Instructional Focus. And really what I want to hone in on is I want to explain just very briefly what this chart means and what we mean by instructional focus. When we say focus, it's not the total amount of your instruction. It's just what you concentrate on. And the way the graph works, the bars themselves represent 100% of the students in any given grade level here. The dark bars, that's a focus on phonological awareness and fluency. The white bars are focused on vocabulary and comprehension. And so in the young grades, when they're just learning to read and access text, the instructional focus is on the phonological awareness and the fluency. But as students start to read and read well, we all know that kind of magic moment where they really just take off. Somewhere around here, most students, you're starting to see some of it. And what'll happen is the students who have really taken off, well, they need some tools in the comprehension and vocabulary area to start to access more rich and fuller text with longer books and things like that. And of course, you know, the graph moves in this direction as more and more students acquire that. But the thing that I want to make sure that we recognize is that in the older grade levels, we're talking about students, you know, there's going to be some students all the way up probably through 12th grade who still need some of that phonological awareness and fluency practice. And so we've included this area in the literacy plan to make sure that we don't leave those students behind as they transition from elementary to middle and then from middle to high. And so that's what the purpose of this chart is to show. Okay, now you're looking at an overview of the plan. And when I present this face to face, I explain to folks that this is the 30,000 foot look at the plan by grade level. And what's in here, these are just look fors. These are the kind of things that you're going to find in your whole group, in your small group, and some assessments that you should see. This is just to kind of ground us in the look fors from kindergarten on up through 6th grade, and this will include 7th and 8th this next year, and then on up into the high school the following year. This chart has a companion chart that's a few pages later that talks about reader level dependent look fors. And we'll get to that in a minute. But before we get to the reader levels, we have to understand some of the assessments and where we place students based on those assessments. So this next page 7, this is a chart that gives you some bands, ranges, if you will, for two types of way to look at readers and where they are. We have our F&P and we have Lexile. Lexile is a measure of readability, sophistication of text, if you will, sentence length, vocabulary, that sort of thing. F&P is more a measure of fluency and accuracy when reading out loud. So they measure two different things, but if you think back to the focus chart, especially down in here, this area down here, the F&P is what we're really looking to use to measure those students, because that fluency and accuracy is so very important. But as the students start to read, in 3rd grade through 6th grade, we're going to be screening students with SRI, which is Scholastic Reading Inventory, and that is designed to measure a lexile level for the students. So we're using 2 different instruments. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to use F&P on some of these upper grade levels based on how they perform on the SRI, but we'll give you a little bit more about that here in a minute. But these are ranges. They're not absolutes, but this is just to kind of give you an idea of where things should fall. In the bands on the lexiles in particular, that represents probably 75% of students in a given grade level. All right, the next one is our literacy plan minimum assessment calendar. So this is the minimum that we do. This is what's required by the county. You can certainly do more of this if you'd like, but this is what our minimum is. And it starts with PALS. PALS is state driven. There's state guidelines for it. They publish those guidelines every year. I won't cover those. F&P, there are changes this year with the F&P. First of all, in 1st and 2nd grade, both, there's going to be F&P at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. So you're going to get a minimum of 2 F&Ps in 1st grade and 2nd grade. But in 3rd grade, you're only going to need to F&P those students who fall below certain threshold on the SRI, and or based on their previous F&P if they were very low to start with. Perhaps the SRI is not something that they should be screened with. I'm thinking of English language learners, some students with certain IEPs, so forth and so on. But that's a decision you need to make about individual students. The DSA is still here, as are the RCPS writing rubrics. So twice yearly there, and the DSA accordingly. Here are simply some definitions of all of those initials. Okay, this is the companion piece to that chart I was telling you about with the grade levels. These are look-fors by reader level. You have used those instruments to tease out what reader level your students are, and it's really important to use this chart. I'm calling this the 10,000 foot chart instead of the 30,000 foot chart, because we all know that if you're teaching 1st grade, you're going to have some early emergent, some emergent, some beginning, maybe even transitional, and gosh, you might even have an intermediate. Who knows? But these are the things that these readers need in order to grow in their ability to access text. And so the chart changes, of course, as the readers improve in their level. They, for instance, once they become a beginning reader, they no longer need to be instructed on the concept of print, concept of word, because they understand that words move from left to right on a page and from top to bottom, so forth and so on. So again, these are look-fors, and they change according to the level of the reader. Moving on to page 10, this is where the literacy plan becomes a how-to guide as opposed to just a piece of informational text. This part right here, this is beginning the part that's going to help you with what to do specifically in your whole group and your small group reading instruction. It sets forth expectation and also gives you ideas and places to go for resources. So let me explain how this works. Up here at the top under the bold text up here, this tells you what specific section this is addressing. The stuff on the left here, the essential topics, these are the things that we have to do. Over here on the right, these are some suggestions about how you can do those things. And it also points to some resources that you may find that we're trying to provide for you on the how-to. In other words, these are the must-dos over here, and this is the menu of how you can do those sorts of things. So I'm going to flip to page 11 since I've marked this one all up. Okay, let me show you how to navigate this just a little bit here. In the strategies, in this part right here, if you are working on this instructional piece and you're looking for ideas of how to do it, each one of these is a different strategy on how to do the blending. The samples, if you'll remember back to the table of content, the samples are in the back of this guide, and it shows you and leads you to the samples on how to do these specific things. So the guide lays out the essential things you have to do, and then a menu of ways that you might accomplish it. And so that's really how this is a how-to guide. And it's laid out by reader level, not grade level. Page 12, you've gone to emergent. 13, more emergent. Here are the beginning level readers. This is the vocabulary and comprehension component that you're going to do in your whole group instruction. These are the things that have to be taught, and these are all the different ways that you could do it. Now, if you have ways that you accomplish these things already, you certainly don't have to use the strategies that we've laid out here for you. That's not the idea. The idea is that here are some new, fresh ideas of things that you might want to try with some materials that back those up. But if you're all dialed in on making and confirming predictions and you've got your stuff and you like the way it works, that's absolutely fine and appropriate. But think of the teacher who has moved grade level or is brand new to us or is brand new to teaching altogether. So these are things that are designed to help them. This goes all the way through transitional, intermediate, advanced, and lays out all of the different things that have to be done. All right, now we arrive here at our sample lesson plans. The sample lesson plans are just that. These are sample plans that you can use for small group instruction by reader level. It lays out the stuff that matches up to the guide on the previous pages. It allows you to do it by day. It allows you to put the names of your students in these small groups. So you may only have 6 in this small group. You may have 8 in a larger group with higher level readers, so forth and so on. But this is available on Blackboard as a PDF, and these boxes are boxes that are hotspots that you can type in. And the grids are fixed so that it doesn't make the formatting funky. But again, they're available to you. They're a sample. They're for your use. If you've already got a small group lesson plan set up that you like, that's fine as well. But this is by reader level. Here's early. These are emergent, beginning, and you notice the stuff changes to match the stuff in the how-to guide above. Transitional. Once we get to transitional, we've plugged in the Lexile level because you may measure your students there as opposed to the F and P. And here we have intermediate with our highest levels. We did not include an advanced small group guided reading lesson plan because by the time they get to advanced, it doesn't tease out some of these things specifically for small group. It's mostly designed for practicing what happens in the whole group instruction. Okay, this next section, we have an outline of what our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions look like. And the reason we've included this, first of all, Roanoke County is not a pure RTI, or response to intervention district. We do tiered interventions, but we don't follow the state's full-on RTI model. What we do, though, is we outline the stuff that happens in the Tier 1, the Tier 2, and the Tier 3. The Tier 1 being the kind of things that a classroom teacher will do to try to bridge the small gaps that students may have in specific areas, so that they don't have to end up in a Tier 2 intervention. But if they do end up in a Tier 2 intervention, we've outlined the criteria for selecting the students, how much time it takes, who does it, what the grouping looks like, how we monitor progress and frequency, and what materials are available to deliver that sort of thing. So it's very specific, and Tier 2 interventions are designed to be that way. Tier 3, it gets further specific and starts to probably be one-on-one with students who have some sort of exceptionality or other severe deficiencies for various reasons. The supplemental programs, these can be used at all levels with all students based on what it might be and how it might help the student. These charts will be further developed throughout this year, and in next year's version of the literacy plan, they will be a little more specific and populated with more information. Then we've included the writing rubrics. They are on the minimum assessment chart, and we've included them from K all the way through 6. We've also included the oral language rubrics. All of this stuff is available on Blackboard under the Learning Resource Zone. And now this specific part right here, we are on page 44, and I really want to take some time to explain this. So please pay attention to this, because in 2010, when the state changed our reading SOLs, they inserted in every grade level, K through 12th grade, an SOL that says that the language arts English teachers are to use the vocabulary of other content areas. That becomes a tested SOL in 3rd grade, and it's tested in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and end of course. And so while it's tested and they plugged it in, they didn't really give us very specific information about these. So along with my colleagues around the state who are also coordinators of English language arts, we've come up with a way to interpret this that I think works best for students and best for teachers. And so I want to take a minute here to really walk you through this, so that I don't want anybody hyperventilating over the lists of words that are here that you're supposed to use. I want to explain it in a way that makes sense and makes it workable for you. First of all, when we unpack our SOLs, we look at the verbs. And the verb here says to use. It doesn't say to create elaborate lesson plans around teaching these words. It simply says use. Well, we can't use them if we don't know what they are. So I went to the other content area coordinators and I had them approach the state and get vocabulary from the state that shows up in their particular SOLs in the particular grade levels. And so here you're looking at kindergarten vocabulary. Well, just a glance at these words, you know as well as I do that a lot of these words are not age appropriate, and these students are not going to own these words. Um, Moving on to first grade, it's the same thing. But these words are words that show up in the math curriculum, the science curriculum, and the social studies curriculum in first grade. And so in a couple of the face-to-face presentations that I've made here, we've had a little bit of a giggle about loam, for instance. And loam is not a word that you're going to create an elaborate lesson plan around. But here's how we're looking at it from the state's perspective on how to approach this. Let's say that you are teaching a large book to a group, for your whole group. This is a book that's above their reading level, but you're reading it to them and you're walking them through it. You're showing them some comprehension skills, so forth and so on. And I don't know, let's say that the book is about peat bogs or something like that, and the word loam comes up in the course of the book. If you simply remember that loam is on this list, maybe take a moment to explain to the students what loam is and why it's important to the story, and move on. But if you do that, if you'll take the time to do that, then when science comes around and the word loam shows up, then it doesn't really just bounce off their heads. They've got a story to connect it to, and they've heard it before. They may not remember it specifically. They may not really own that word. They probably won't, but it won't be brand new to them at that point. There is no way you can remember all these words, and there's no way that all of the stuff that you teach in the normal course of your instruction is going to hit each and every one of these words. But if you do a few of them, it will help your students. And so that's our interpretation of this. So please don't think that this is just, a huge list of words that you've got to plow through with your particular students. We've included them first grade, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth, and fifth. We haven't included sixth grade yet, but those are coming. These words were gathered before we inserted sixth grade into the literacy plan. But the idea is glance at them, familiarize yourself with them, and if in the course of your regular instruction you have the opportunity to use them, use a few of them. And that's really all that we're asking for. I hope that makes sense. When we get to this next slide, we are into the samples, okay? And the whole rest of the book are the samples that match up to the strategies in the how-to portion of the literacy plan. So take your time, flip through these, see what they mean, and I just have a few more things to say before we're done with this. First of all, these samples will all be available in digital form on Blackboard, so that if you see a sample you'd like to try and you'd want to download it and print it yourself so that you'd have real copies of it, they will be there. We are developing and will be made available shortly a set of instructions for each of these samples, so that if you like what it looks like but you're not exactly sure how to implement it, then you'll have some instructions that will walk you through the process. So those will also be available on Blackboard. It's under the Learning Resource Zone. It'll be under a section called Guided Reading Support. So if you have the opportunity to go there and poke around, the list is not complete now, but we will continue to populate it as we develop things, and it'll just be more and more resources for you. So that is the end of the presentation. If you have any questions at all, you can approach your reading specialist. You can ask your building level administrators, or you can certainly email or call me with any questions at all. And I really appreciate you taking the time to look at this and listen to this. And I hope that it works well for you, and I hope that you have a great year. Thank you.